Hello, Maverick fans. Welcome to another edition of the Mavpuckcast. I am Jon, and I am here today with Bridget, who is joining me for her first podcast appearance of the second half of our season. What did you think of that North Dakota series up in Grand Forks? We had hoped to be able to go up to that series, but Arctic weather came to the Omaha metro area.
I feel like I've spent a lot of time with you on the road for hockey this particular season, but really disappointed not to have made that trip up to Grand Forks. It actually was warmer in Grand Forks than it was here in Omaha. So who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Maybe we should have made that trip up I-29 because it was a very exciting and eventful series for UNO. But before we get into that, we've got to give a shout out to our official merchandise sponsor for the Mavpuckcast this season, Lawler's Custom Sportswear. As many of you know, Bridget and I seem to always be sporting UNO hockey gear. Does not matter the time of year. It could be during the meat of the season. It could be during the middle of the summer. Most of our wardrobe is from Lawler's Custom Sportswear, Bridge.
That is true. And I can't tell you the number of times that people think that I work for the university because I'm wearing Maverick gear. I think we need to get more folks out there wearing their UNO apparel from Lawler's so that people will stop asking me if I'm a UNO employee.
I know we hear from a number of UNO fans that this happens. That's the common question is, are you an employee of UNO? The other common question with all of those road games we went on during the first half of the season was which of the players is our son? And sadly, we don't work for UNO, nor do we have a son on the team. So nothing we can do to rectify that. And if you would like to be mistaken for a UNO employee or the parent of one of the UNO hockey players, be sure to head down to Lawler's Custom Sportswear brick and mortar store on South 84th Street here in Omaha, or visit them online at lawlerscustom.com. So UNO had their first series of the second half of the NCHC season. It was a big one going to North Dakota. North Dakota is our travel partner in the NCHC. Going into that Friday game, boy, that game turned out to be a barn burner. 10 seconds into the game, Bridge, UND's Jackson Blake puts the effing Hawks up 1-0. And I got to be honest with you, I was a little worried that soon into the game, one shot, one goal for North Dakota. I was worried about how it was going to go.
That's definitely not the way that you want to start the second half of the conference play. But UNO, of course, turned it right back around and evened it up with their own one shot, one goal just 71 seconds later.
Absolutely. Zach Erdahl, who is making the habit of scoring the first goal for UNO on Friday nights here in 2024, ties things up for UNO. 4 goals for Erdahl this season. You and I both have been impressed with him coming back from that injury in the first half of the season, Bridge.
Yep. He was the player that was at last week's press conference that I attended. I feel like he's fitting right in. He's definitely made an impact coming back from that injury, and we're glad to have him back.
He was originally recruited by UNO before he committed and went to play at Wisconsin. So I'm really glad that Mike Gabinet and company got a second chance on him because he's been a lot of fun to watch here this season. One of my favorite players for the 2023-24 campaign. North Dakota added 2 power play goals later in the first. We left that period down 3-1 to North Dakota. So certainly not an ideal position to be in, but that Erdahl goal helped take some of the sting of that away. And then 1:23 into the second, Omaha's Matt Miller nets a power play goal. It's good to see UNO starting to have some success on the power play here in the second half of the season. It was a greasy goal down low that he just kind of pushed through Ludwig Pearson's 5-hole there, narrows the lead to 3-2. Were you feeling better at that point, Bridget, about UNO's chances in this game?
Well, definitely. Again, being on the road, North Dakota is always a tough place to play. It would have been easy for the guys to just kind of pack it in, but definitely a lot of hustle, a lot of grit. to get that score a little bit closer.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things that we've been talking about with this UNO team this season. It's not always pretty, but they don't give up, and that's been really impressive to see. They've been in a lot of close, low-scoring games, so nice to see the boys fight back here. And then 2.5 minutes after the Miller goal, senior Brock Bremer nets a goal off a sweet pass from Ty Mueller. You were impressed with Mueller all weekend long.
I sure was. Boy, that behind the back, no look pass set Bremer up, both of them, crashing towards the net. And just a huge, huge play for Omaha to get back into this game.
Absolutely. The game is tied up 3-3 at that point. UNO and UND each tally an additional goal in that second period. Mueller had the fourth goal for UNO, a power play goal, 12:56 into the period. The game is tied 4-4 after two. Honestly, a really, really impressive period for UNO, coming back, taking control of the play, gaining the momentum, getting more possession in their offensive zone. Exciting to see the guys battle back. So it was a new game going into that third period, and there were some exciting plays throughout the third and some big plays from sophomore goaltender Simon Lacozy.
Yeah, Simon really helped keep that game tied in the third period. And then, of course, there was the controversial penalty to Sullivan, which we were afraid was going to change the momentum there in the third period.
You're really worried letting them have that 5 minutes. All you can eat power play, as commentator Dave Starman calls it. The game was tied 4-4 after that third period, and it goes to the 5-minute 3-on-3 overtime, something, Bridge, that UNO has become all too familiar with this season.
Yeah, Mavs have been in a lot of one-goal games, and they've certainly been in a lot of overtime games. They came up big in that overtime period with Jack Randall making that great play to win the game in overtime for Omaha.
Absolutely. 34 seconds into OT. Jack Randall gets the game-winning goal in OT. It was set up off of a rebound from a Nolan Krenzen shot. Brad Berry challenged the goal in overtime for goaltender interference. Ty Mueller ran into Ludwig Pearson, but officials determined that North Dakota defenseman Garrett Pike knocked him into the goalie. You and I were thinking they might wave off that goal, Bridge, as we were watching.
There's been a lot of talk about officiating, in particular NCHC officiating, and the referees took a look at it and determined that Pike was at fault for pushing Mueller into Pearson. And so, like I said, great outcome for the Mavs on Friday night.
Because the game went to the 3-on-3 overtime, UNO gets 2 out of a possible 3 conference points for that game, but a good showing on the road at Ralph Engelstad Arena, which is it's a tough place for everybody to play. So we head into that Saturday game. We were certainly hopeful that UNO could get some more points on the weekend. The game was scoreless through the first period. UNO did play well during that first period, so 0-0 after the first. And then we go into the second period, 6:46 into the second. North Dakota's Griffin Ness puts UND up 1-0. It's 1-0 after 2 periods up in Grand Forks. So UNO certainly has an opportunity at that point, Bridge.
Yep. And Ness had been the extra skater for North Dakota. So for him to key that North Dakota goal was great for them, terrible for us. But still, Mavs are only down 1 goal. And like we talked about earlier, there's no quitting these guys. So it wasn't over yet.
Absolutely right. And 49 seconds into the third, Omaha freshman sensation Tanner Ludke ties it up for the Mavs early in the third. Boy, I've been impressed with Tanner these last few weekends for UNO. You know, he's a guy coming in from the Lincoln Stars of the USHL. He put up a lot of points in juniors last season. We're expecting big things, but he's still developing that chemistry with Mueller and some of the other guys on the roster.
Yeah, he definitely has the ability to make big plays. Like you mentioned, at Lincoln, he was producing a point a game, basically. And so for him to get hot is really going to be critical for the Mavs in the second half stretch. And this was certainly a timely goal for the Mavs.
North Dakota scores two unanswered goals later on in that third period. 3:35 into the third, North Dakota's Dylan James puts UND up 2-1. UNO tried to knot it up. They tried to tie it up. It just didn't happen. In the closing moments of the third, former UNO forward Cam Berg gets an empty netter for North Dakota, and the Fighting Hawks end up winning the game, getting 3 conference points. They got 4 of 6 points on the weekend. Boy, it was kind of hard this weekend watching Cam Berg wear the green and black for North Dakota. We had the chance last season to sit with him at a Dinner with the Mavs event. A really good kid, played for the Omaha Lancers. We were really sorry to see him go, Bridge.
I generally wish former Mavs, those old Bulls, well, but you're right. That was really tough to see him on the opposing team this weekend, and then to have him hit the empty netter was just kind of a dagger in our heart. Would have been great to have him back as a Mav this year because of his offensive effectiveness, but at the same time, these guys with the portal and everything else, they have to do what's best for their game. But at least it wasn't the game winner.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's an adventure with the transfer portal in college hockey currently, and it's really brought free agency to collegiate athletics. So it'll be interesting to see how Cam Berg's season goes the rest of the way. He certainly established himself as a faceoff specialist with the Fighting Hawks. This is going to be interesting to see how he does down the stretch. So as I mentioned, UND wins the game 3-1, but I think we would agree 2 points out of that series going on the road to North Dakota was a good outcome for the Mavs. The fact of the matter is that we've struggled putting up points, and we've struggled on the power play. The power play is starting to heat up a little bit here. So I know that Coach Gabinet mentioned during the midweek presser that you attended that the team's been working on that.
Coach Gabinet mentioned, even just having a power play goal or two come about would really help with these really close contests. The Mavs are 9-2 and 0 in 1-goal contests. And so he's absolutely correct. Those 2 power play goals on Friday night were key. And like I said, we need that to continue down the stretch.
So as I mentioned, North Dakota gets 4 of 6 points on the weekend. Simon Lacosi had a total 62 saves in the series. We learned this week that he is on the Mike Richter Award watch list for his performance in net this season. So congratulations to Simon. He, as Mav fans are aware, gets the bulk of the playing time in net. So he has really done a yeoman's job for UNO, Bridge.
Great to see him continuing to have success as a Mav. And again, he's going to be critical down the stretch as well.
So we've got to talk about our players of the week for this North Dakota series, Bridge. Who did you like as player of the week for UNO in this series against North Dakota?
Well, you alluded to him earlier, and I definitely was impressed with the play of junior forward Ty Mueller this weekend. He had a 4-point weekend, power play goal, like we mentioned, on Friday night with 2 assists, including that beautiful behind the back no-look pass to Bremer that set up that goal. And then he had an assist on Saturday's goal. So definitely a strong weekend for him. We've needed Ty to get going again. He had a really strong November. And the other thing that was really impressive with him this past weekend was his work in the faceoff dot. He had 8 of 13 in the faceoffs on Saturday and 11 of 20 in the faceoff dot on Friday. And as you know, puck possession, hugely important to making these key plays for the Mavericks. And so for his scoring and for his work in faceoffs, Ty Mueller gets my nod this week.
Absolutely right. Ty is a great player. He's still, even though he's a junior on the team, he's still a young guy. He came to UNO fairly young compared to some of the recruits that we get in here after they play their junior stints. And so you and I, obviously, the last 3 seasons have been impressed with Ty Mueller, and certainly we're hoping for big things going forward because he's an important part of our offensive success on this season. And I was impressed with his puck handling this weekend, his ability and his awareness to get the puck where it needed to be. We talked about that goal that Bremer had, just that beautiful no look behind the back pass that he made across the ice to Bremer was key. So he leads the team in points, 7 goals and 10 assists this season. Great pick, Bridge. If you hadn't picked him, I might have picked him myself. But I've got to go with freshman forward Tanner Ludke. I don't think we've picked him as our player of the week on the Mavpuckcast yet. So we're going to rectify that situation right now. He had 1 goal and 2 assists at North Dakota. He's currently 3rd on the team in points with 5 goals and 7 assists. We need him to come up big here in the second half stretch if we're going to make a run at the top half of the NCHC conference.
You know, a lot of times freshmen forwards in particular have a hard time adjusting to the pace of the game, especially in the NCHC where there's so many skilled, high impact players, but he's making that adjustment quite well. And if we can keep him healthy and producing, I think it bodes really well for the Mavs.
A really good kid from a good family. Great to see him playing with his brother here at Omaha this season. And we look forward to watching both of them the next few seasons for UNO. But as we look ahead to the second half stretch here of NCHC play, fans are already starting to talk about the NCHC playoffs. And a few weeks ago, it was announced that the NCHC is going to have a new conference playoff format starting in the 2025-26 season. Bridge, you were able to attend a virtual press conference on behalf of Mavpuck.com with NCHC Commissioner Heather Weems about the new format. We were wondering if and when they were going to go to a campus site conference championship, because certainly the CCHA does it and the Big Ten does it. And we thought maybe it'll end up happening here. Certainly with COVID, which kind of threw things off at the XL Energy Center, we wondered how long that was going to last. As I mentioned, the current format has the postseason NCHC tournament in 2 weekends. So the current format has the 8-member schools playing each other in a best-of-3 series at the higher seeds home venue the first weekend. And then the 4 teams that win in the first weekend of the NCHC playoffs are reseeded and move on to the NCHC Frozen Faceoff at the XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. And then there are 2 semifinal games at St. Paul on Friday night, and then there's a championship game on Saturday night. There used to be a 3rd place game, which they eliminated after the 2018-19 season when you and I attended the NCHC playoffs up there. The winner of the Frozen Faceoff, of course, gets the auto bid to the NCAA tournament. Although the NCHC is strong enough that typically the winner of the NCHC Frozen Faceoff was going to be an at-large participant in the NCAA tournament. Anyway, the format will stay the same this season, of course, and the format will stay the same for next season, the 2024-25 season. But the addition of Arizona State to the NCHC next season means there will be a play-in game between the number 8 and number 9 seed at the number 1 seed's campus arena to determine who will play the number 1 seed in that first round best-of-3 series. Now, the 2026 format is where things change a little bit. It goes from a 2-weekend conference tournament to a 3-weekend conference tournament. And as I mentioned earlier, the conference tournament will be held entirely on campus sites. The first weekend will stay the same between the 9 seeds. And then the second weekend will feature the 4 winning seeds from that first weekend in a single elimination semifinal game at the 2 remaining higher seed sites. Okay, so it'll still go from 8 teams down to 4 teams, but rather than going to St. Paul for the Frozen Faceoff, instead, the lower 2 seeds will go to the higher 2 seeds campus arena for a single game that weekend. And then the winner of those 2 games will head to the highest seed remaining's campus barn to play for the NCHC championship. And Bridget is looking at me here, and I am just praying that I am describing this right, because I probably went into more depth than I needed to. But throughout the season, when we're sitting in the stands at Baxter Arena, people ask me questions about this stuff. And, people just aren't kind of keyed in, who attend the games, to some of the intricacies of the conference race that those of us who follow all the nitty gritty details are. So, Bridge, you attended the press conference. NCHC play during the regular season will actually be starting a week earlier now to accommodate a 3-week playoff. But this is something a lot of us have thought was coming, and you gained some insights in that press conference with Commissioner Weems.
Yeah, it was really cool to be a part of that press conference because, like you said, there's so many details that are involved in this change that's going to be happening in 2025 with the addition of Arizona State, and then 2026 with no longer having the Xcel Energy Center host the semifinals and the finals. So it was really neat to be able to be on that call and get some insight from NCHC leadership, including Commissioner Weems, about how this was going to work. I will say one of the things that really came out of that for me is that there's a lot of things that they haven't determined yet, but there's definitely a lot of time for them to work through some of those details. As you mentioned, one of the biggest things is they're going to be stopping conference play a week earlier than normal. But of course, there's a realignment with Arizona State joining. So again, they've got time to adjust those schedules as well. But the biggest impact, I think, that the NCHC initially alluded to was the time and the travel and the wear on the student athletes with all of that travel up to St. Paul and that sort of thing. But we knew, having attended in 2019, that the mix of teams that makes it to St. Paul really has a huge impact financially. If you don't have North Dakota or one of those closer teams in Duluth or St. Cloud at the Frozen Faceoff, it really impacts the finances of that event, and in particular, making it be successful. And they've been really lucky throughout the years of the NCHC that they've had at least one of those teams close by that has helped make up the attendance. But you can't guarantee that going forward, particularly with the parity that exists in this conference. And so in an interview with CHN, Commissioner Weems had alluded to the fact that there was a really favorable arrangement with the Xcel Energy Center, but that contract was expiring. So I'm sure that that heavily contributed as well. Of course, they want to take care of the student athletes and the staff and the coaches and that sort of thing. But the bottom line is it is likely to be more financially profitable to have these campus sites instead of that neutral conference playoff venue.
Yeah, absolutely right. When we attended in March of 2019, we won tickets from UNO, actually. I wanted to go and experience what it was like. So I'm glad we got a chance to do that. Even though UNO wasn't there, it was a lot of fun. But North Dakota did not make it to the semifinals that year. And it was a big hit on attendance. It certainly helped having St. Cloud and Minnesota Duluth, who ended up playing for the Frozen Faceoff Championship, playing there. But you look at last season and you look at the top 4 seeds in the conference race, it very easily could have been a situation where you had Denver, Western Michigan, Omaha, and St. Cloud up at the Frozen Faceoff. Now, North Dakota ended up upsetting us in the first round of the NCHC playoffs, so they ended up getting North Dakota in St. Paul at the Xcel Energy Center. But you look in the future with the addition of Arizona State, who's been a good, solid team since they've gone Division I under Greg Powers, and you start to envision a scenario where someday down the road it could be Denver, Western, Omaha, and Arizona State in St. Paul for that. And you just imagine anemic ticket sales and anemic turnout. And you and I in our business doing publicity for businesses and organizations, we've worked ticketed events at local arenas doing publicity, and I can only imagine how much it costs to put on something at a big NHL rink like the Xcel Energy Center Bridge.
For sure. And a big part of that, obviously, is you're not getting a lot of those local fans who are coming to support it like you do for the College World Series in Omaha, for example. At the College World Series in Omaha, you have Omaha season ticket holders who make up maybe 50% of the attendance at the event. And that hasn't been the case for the NCHC Frozen Faceoff. And so they really rely on the fans of the teams that are playing to come and purchase tickets and support that event. And, with so much hockey happening at the end of the season there, you've got the Frozen Face-Off and then immediately the regionals. And if your team does well in the regionals, then you're looking forward to the Frozen Four. You're asking a lot of those fans to invest their time and money in things. And so keeping these games close to home with campus sites, I think, is a sound financial move and one that was probably due for the NCHC with the realignment in the conference.
And in addition to this, you mentioned the NCAA regionals, and one of the things that was kind of alluded to during that press conference is the fact that, there are a lot of coaches in the NCHC who are in favor of making the NCAA regionals a campus site affair and going away from those neutral sites around the country. It's difficult. We've attended a number of regionals with UNO over the years, and turnout can be very anemic at some of those events. I know everybody's like, it's more competitive at neutral sites. It would be less competitive at somebody's home arena, but it's just the financial realities. And when you look at sports like, NCAA baseball, NCAA volleyball, which is a big one here in Nebraska, you look at the fact that games are played in home arenas in those early rounds of the NCAA tournament. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. If it stays neutral sites, Commissioner Weems alluded to the fact in that presser that it would allow the XL Center to bid on a regional, which might make it a little bit more possible to get some of those regionals west of the Mississippi River, which is a hard thing to do right now.
Yeah, she did definitely mention that. And we've seen in the past couple of years, it has been difficult to have Western venues. UNO, of course, is the host in Sioux Falls this year, but opening up some more of those venues, like you said, west of the Mississippi, is very helpful for teams in the NCHC in particular that would not have to travel out to the East Coast then as often, especially if they're the host institutions.
Absolutely. It's kind of hard when you have a Midwest regional in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I'm sure people in the Rust Belt think of that as Midwest, but I, living here kind of right in the middle of the country, do not. So it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. I'm sure that there will be more details coming out of the NCHC meetings after this season. It'll be fascinating to see how this develops, and it'll be fascinating to see how it affects UNO in the future. UNO has not made it to the NCHC Frozen Face-Off at the Xcel Energy Center since this conference formed a decade ago. So it's going to be interesting to see if UNO can get it done here in the next two seasons. The last time UNO made a neutral site conference semifinal was in the 2000-2001 season. Bridget and I were there. We were in our 20s. We are now in our 50s. We thought that it was going to be a common occurrence going and watching a UNO play in those semifinals and finals in conference play, and it has not happened. So hopefully the Mavs can get it done, Bridge.
Someday, Omaha.
Someday, Omaha. That's right. I'm so glad we did those shirts as part of our special apparel collection with Lawler's Custom this year. Coming up, we got Denver at Baxter Arena on January 19th and 20th. It's an opportunity to get some big conference points because right now UNO sits alone in seventh place in the conference race. So it would help things along to try to pull our way back up to the middle of the pack. DU is 15-5-2 overall. They come in after earning a win and a tie against St. Cloud at Magnus Arena last weekend. You and I watched some of that Saturday night tie that St. Cloud ended up winning in a shootout for the extra conference point. Denver is currently third in the NCHC with 17 points. As I mentioned a moment ago, UNO is alone in seventh with 11 points. So they've got some ground to make up. And UNO teams under Coach Gabinet typically have been strong in the confines of Baxter Arena. So they've got to take advantage of this opportunity. We saw some good play for UNO last fall when we were out in Denver for that interesting series. Bridget, what are your thoughts going into this series against DU this upcoming weekend?
Well, I know I sound like a broken record, but definitely special teams are going to be a critical component to this weekend. Denver had 3 power play goals against St. Cloud last weekend. UNO needs to keep their power play clicking. We are 7-1-0 when we score a power play goal.
DU coach David Carl is coming off a gold medal coaching performance at the IIHF World Junior Cup, leading Team USA to the gold medal. So quite an accomplishment there for the 34-year-old David Carl. I'll tell you what, he's young and his life just seems to be one boulevard of unbroken green lights. So it's great to be Dave Carl these days. He is 131, 58, and 15 with DU. So he's had success. Certainly, I would give some of that credit to his 2 talented assistants, Tavis McMillan and Dallas Ferguson, who are both coaches that we were familiar with in UNO's CCHA days because they both coached together and were both head coaches at Alaska Fairbanks, and were able to get a lot out of those Nanook teams when they were there. A couple players I would encourage fans to watch. Certainly junior forward Massimo Rizzo is a name you're going to hear a lot. He's the nation's leading point producer. He has 9 goals and 25 assists on the season. Junior forward Jack Devine is coming off a 3-point weekend against St. Cloud. He has 18 goals and 15 assists for the Pioneers. And then the goalie situation has been very interesting. When UNO was out there, freshman Freddie Halleck got both nights in net because Matt Davis was injured. Well, Matt Davis is back in the lineup, and he currently has a 2.66 goals against average. It's been an interesting situation with the goalies. They have 4 goaltenders on the roster. They brought in a guy around mid-season, Bridge.
Yeah, that was very interesting for me to see that they added Paxton Geisel, who joined them in late November and played at Western Michigan. So while we expect that it'll probably be Matt Davis in goal for them, they definitely have a roster of experienced goaltenders. 2 of them are freshmen, but still they've gotten some play this season. And so we'll just have to see what kind of matchup we get this weekend when they come into Baxter.
Absolutely. And one interesting note on Freddie Halleck, he played youth hockey with Omaha's Ty Mueller in Cochrane, Alberta. So he has a 2.91 goals against average and a 0.883 save percentage. Bridget, are there any players you're keeping an eye on this weekend?
Well, yeah, you mentioned David Carl and the World Junior Championship. One of the players that he was coaching was one of his own, freshman defenseman Zeev Buyum is one of the Buyum brothers. He has 27 points so far this season, 5 goals and 22 assists. Junior defenseman Shai Buyum, the older of the 2 Buyum brothers, has 4 goals and 14 assists on the season so far. He's a big guy, 6'4", 210 pounds, really is able to throw his weight around. They've gotten quite a bit of attention of late. They definitely have some serious point production this season. So the 2 of them are definitely players to keep an eye on this weekend, jumping into the play, definitely on the power play as well. So I'd encourage Mav fans to keep an eye on the Buyum brothers.
I can tell that Bridget loved having to try and pronounce the Buyum brother names. Like you mentioned, they're both terrific players. Zeev watching him last November when we were out in the Mile High City watching UNO play at Magnus Arena. Very impressive player for being a freshman. Really, really talented defenseman. It's going to be interesting to see how long he stays and how he develops over the next couple of seasons. So lots of talented players on this roster. You just look at the roster, you look at the stats, you go up and down the list, lots of depth. As we mentioned, though, with the goaltending, that I think is probably the biggest question. So there is an opportunity for UNO. They just have to play smart. If UNO is able to establish themselves in their offensive zone, put some pressure on Denver, I think that they can have success because a number of teams have had success against DU this season. So they're not quite the juggernaut that they've been in recent seasons, but look, it's the second half of the season, and as we're all well aware, Denver has a way of turning it on in second half conference play. So it's going to be interesting. Bridget, what's your pick for this weekend? Certainly, as we mentioned, we had a great time out in Denver last November, and that was a very exciting, kind of unpredictable series. I don't think there's going to be any ice fiascos at Baxter Arena this weekend, but who knows? What's your pick for this weekend? Is UNO going to be able to sweep? Are they going to get swept? Are they going to find a way to split? What do you think is going to happen?
As much as I would love UNO to sweep Denver, I just don't know if we're quite there yet. So I'm going to pick a split with Denver. And one interesting thing that we've noticed is in the first half of the season, UNO tended to lose on Friday night and then win on Saturday. But here in 2024, the fortunes have reversed, and the last two series we have won on Friday night and lost on Saturday night. So I'm going to say that trend continues this week with Omaha getting the win on Friday night and then losing, of course, a close contest on Saturday night because we've had a lot of one-goal games so far this season. So why not on Saturday?
Why not? It'll be interesting to see if they hold the form early in this second half of the 2023-24 campaign. I'm going to be a little more optimistic. Now, UNO has not swept an NCHC series this season. So precedents would say that a split was going to be our best outcome in this series, but I'm going to be positive here in the first home game of the 2024 calendar year. And I'm going to say that UNO finds a way to sweep both of these games. I think it's going to be close on Friday night for UNO. I think they're going to win one of those nip-tuck games that goes down to the wire, closing moments of the third, or that 3-on-3 overtime, which UNO has become very familiar with. I think that's the scenario for Friday night. And then I think on Saturday night, UNO is able to pull away in the second period and get a big win over Denver. Going to give them some momentum going to St. Cloud State the following weekend. So I hope that they can get it done, Bridge. Fingers crossed that the Mavs find a way because they could really use 5 or 6 conference points this weekend to get back into that conference race. So we got to stay on pace with those teams the next couple of weekends. If you're interested in coming out to the games this weekend, they are at 7:07 p.m. at Baxter Arena. You can get tickets at omavs.com/tix. That's omavs.com/TIX. If you're interested in joining us for those games, you can listen to both games on 1290 Coil in Omaha or on the Varsity Network app. And of course, both games will be available to view on NCHC TV. You looking forward to the series, Bridge?
My fingers are crossed that the fans remember there is a home series this weekend, because I have to tell you, from being out in Denver on that Sunday afternoon game, the home crowd was not in attendance there. I'm hopeful that the fans will come out Friday and Saturday night and support the Mavs. It's their only chance to see the Mavs play on home ice in the month of January. So come on out, support the team. We hope to see you. It's warm or warmer in Baxter Arena.
Yeah, and I know we'll be chatting with a number of you at the series this weekend. Bridget, of course, will be tweeting the games, so be sure to follow Mavpuck on Twitter Follow us on Facebook. Join our Facebook group. Be sure to answer the questions when you join so that Bridget will let you into the Facebook group. But until next time, go Mavs.
Go Mavs.